Here is Immortal Moments for explanation. Friends, like videos and subscribes to our channel. Martial Universe Season 10 Part 64 Explanation. So let's start our explanation. The vast and mighty mental energy which had flowed in the sky above Dao Sect for 2 months, abruptly surged downwards in a frantic manner as if it in answer to the call of someone. Finally, it rushed into Lin Dong's body. Lin Dong's body was like a bottomless pit as the frightening mental energy poured into him. He did not feel any discomfort. Instead, his face had a faint intoxicated expression on it. Within a short couple of minutes, the vast and mighty mental energy which had frightened countless people in Dao Sect was completely absorbed by Lin Dong. When the final bit of mental energy flowed into Lin Dong's body, warm sunlight came pouring down from the dim sky. In the end, it enveloped the entire Dao Sect. Countless pairs of eyes looked towards the sky where a figure quietly hovered. Although he simply stood there, the many experts from Dao Sect could not detect his presence no matter how hard they tried to sense him. It was the same as when the Fourth Seat King had appeared back then. He was clearly there, but they were unable to feel his presence. What powerful mental energy! It is unexpected that Lin Dong's mental energy has already reached such a frightening level. Ying Xuanzi looked at the figure in the sky and let out a soft sigh after a long while. If I am not wrong, Lin Dong's mental energy has likely already advanced into the legendary Supreme Symbol Master level. This fellow is really a genius. The blind elder sighed. He specialized in mental energy and naturally understood just how terrifying Lin Dong's current level was. A Supreme Symbol Master could compete with a reincarnation stage expert. That lightning river possesses extremely pure lightning power. It is extremely useful in tempering one's yuan power and physical body. This act of Lin Dong has blessed our Dao Sect. Chen Zhen gazed upon the bright lightning river and involuntarily chuckled. Ying Xuanzi also smiled and nodded. Soon after, however, worry rose in his eyes. It's fortunate that Lin Dong is finally out. Otherwise, we really will not know what to do about Huan Huan. What has happened to Huan Huan? The figure in front of them slowly appeared in a ghost-like fashion after Ying Xuanzi's voice sounded. As Lin Dong looked at the former, he frowned and asked. On a mountain behind Dao Sect. A ray of light streaked across the sky before Lin Dong and Ying Xuanzi appeared on a mountain top, which was now emitting a frightening cold aura. Looking past the rich and dense forest, one could see an azure clear ice lake at that spot. Sai, you should go and take a closer look. The cold aura within her body is becoming increasingly terrifying and even I cannot approach her. Ying Xuanzi looked at the distant ice lake, before a painful expression flashed across his eyes. Then, he sighed softly. Lin Dong nodded gently. Without further ado, his body moved before he appeared at the edge of that ice lake. He cast his glance and saw that there was an ice lotus in the middle of the ice lake. Meanwhile, a pretty figure was seated quietly within that ice lotus, while her long icy blue hair flowed down and filled the ice lotus. At the moment, there was a dense chill being emitted from that graceful figure. Meanwhile, that chill was extremely intense and even the surrounding air showed signs of freezing. It was exceedingly overbearing. Lin Dong knitted his brows slightly. Then, he took a step forward before his body appeared in front of the ice lotus in a phantom-like fashion. At the same time, there was a faint black glow undulated on his body, which devoured and took care of the overbearing cold aura that was trying to erode his body. Seated on the ice lotus, Ying Huan had fallen into a deep slumber. Her pretty eyes were tightly shut and her beautiful face was now slightly pale. Occasionally, her delicate figure would tremble and she looked so fragile that it would cause one's heart to ache. Frightening cold aura continuously gushed out from within her body. Lin Dong had sharp eyes and he could tell that as the cold aura continuously surged from within her body, the color of her originally icy blue long hair grew even richer. All of a sudden, Ying Huan's delicate figure trembled intensely. Following which, she subconsciously bit her lips while she knitted her brows tightly. It looked as though she was trying to resist something and there was even a terrified expression on her brows. Lin Dong felt his heart ache when he saw this. His expression turned gloomy immediately as he spoke in his heart, Yang, what is going on? Wasn't she doing fine previously? The strength of the Ice Master appears to be awakening quickly. Yang was silent for a moment before he said, "Why?" Lin Dong's pupils shrunk slightly before he promptly demanded in a deep voice. There was a reason behind everything. Previously, Ying Huan had been suppressing the strength within her body. Therefore, unless some unforeseen circumstances had occurred, why would there be such a drastic change now? Yang hesitated upon hearing this. Why? Lin Dong once again demanded. Meanwhile, there was an additional trace of anger in his voice. It might be related to the Flame Master. Yan laughed bitterly and said, "Flame Master? What has he done to Huan?" Lin Dong's expression changed, while fury rose within his eyes. That fellow was indeed up to no good. He might not have done anything purposefully. After all, he is the Flame Master and possesses an aura from the ancient times. Therefore, after he approached Ying Huan, his aura would act as a magnet that would draw the Ice Master's strength, which lies dormant within Ying Huan's body. Yang said, "Why didn't you say so earlier?" Lin Dong asked furiously. "Initially, I thought that Ying Huan would be able to handle it. I never expected something to go wrong so quickly." Yan laughed bitterly and said, "The Flame Master should have known that by approaching Ying Huan, his aura would stir the dormant strength of the Ice Master within her body, am I right?" With an extremely ugly expression, Lin Dong slowly said, "Well, he should have known about this." Yang nodded and said. Lin Dong slowly retracted the fury within his eyes before his face became calm once again. However, Yang, who knew Lin Dong extremely well, knew that the calmer this fellow was, the greater the fury within his heart. Lin Dong extended his hand and gently stroked Ying Huan's bone-chilling icy blue long hair. After which, he suddenly turned around. With a dark and gloomy expression, he rushed off. In the next moment, he directly appeared in the sky above Dao Sect. Then, he surveyed his surroundings, before he locked his eyes onto a mountain that was at a short distance away. Finally, a dark and solemn furious voice resounded across the sky, "Flame Master, come out now." This sudden roar caused everyone in Dao Sect to be startled. After which, they lifted their heads and saw the gloomy-looking Lin Dong, who was now standing in the sky. This was the first time they ever saw Lin Dong lose his temper till this extent. Ying Xuanzi and the rest also hurried over, before they exchanged glances with each other. Clearly, they did not know what was going on. A fiery glow flashed on the distant mountain. After which, a figure appeared directly across Lin Dong in the sky. Subsequently, that figure frowned slightly and asked, "What is it? You know what you have done. Yet, you dare to question me." When he saw the Flame Master's nonchalant attitude, the fury within Lin Dong's dark black eyes grew, before he coldly chuckled. The Flame Master glanced indifferently at the back mountain of Dao Sect, which was now covered with cold aura. Then, an unknown expression flashed across his eyes before he said, "There are some things in this world that you cannot hide from. Right now, you are merely trying to deceive yourself. Aren't you too much of a busybody?" Lin Dong coldly said, "Dao Sect does not welcome you. Leave. I will not go anywhere before she awakens." The Flame Master shook his head and said nonchalantly, "Awaken? Do you think that she will still be herself after she awakens? I want Ying Huan, not the Ice Master." Lin Dong shouted sternly. "You are far too selfish." The Flame Master frowned and said, "Do you know the weight of the burden on her shoulders? The Yimo are still hiding in this world. Furthermore, it is not as if you do not know how powerful they are. If another world war begins, many lives will be lost and we will all need her to rescue us. At that time, if she remains as Ying Huan and everything in this world falls into the hands of the Yimo, do you really believe that the both of you can escape unscathed? She is unable to carry such a heavy burden. If someone must carry it, I will take her place." Lin Dong clenched his hands tightly before he said in a deep voice, "You?" The Flame Master glanced at Lin Dong. There was a faint trace of derision in his eyes as he said, "On what basis? Just because you have obtained the Devouring Master's inheritance? This burden is something that even the Devouring Master himself cannot carry even if he was alive. Therefore, What gives you the right to utter such words? Moreover, if this burden is so easy to carry, do you think that we will need someone like you to do it? Whether I have the qualifications to do so is not up to you to decide. Lin Dong shook his head and he ceased speaking. However, the stubborn glint in his eyes remained unmovable. What an arrogant brat. Since you dare to make that claim, allow me to try and see if you are qualified. When the Flame Master saw this, he coldly said. Meanwhile, fury rose within his heart. Bang! After he spoke, the sky behind him suddenly became crimson red. After which, he stomped his foot. Immediately, flame-like crimson yuan power swept forward, before they transformed into a large fiery palm that ruthlessly smashed towards Lin Dong. A cold glint flashed across Lin Dong's eyes when he saw the Flame Master's attack. However, he did not budge. Instead, thunder clouds began to gather in the sky above him. After which, a 10,000 feet large thunderbolt came whistling downwards like a lightning dragon before it ruthlessly clashed with that large fiery palm. Bang! A terrifying assault wave spread and even space itself became somewhat distorted when those two clashed. Though Lin Dong's body was shaking, he did not step back. Instead, a stern expression surged within his black eyes. The Flame Master was indeed powerful. However, Lin Dong's mental energy had advanced to the Supreme Symbol Master level. Together with the fact that his Yuan power cultivation had touched reincarnation, it was clearly impossible for the Flame Master to suppress Lin Dong with his avatar. If you do not leave, I will destroy your avatar. Lin Dong was clearly infuriated by the fact that the Flame Master had attacked him suddenly. Immediately, he waved his sleeve before a glow whistled forward. After which, it swelled rapidly in the sky and eventually turned into an incomparably large ancient formation. Ancient Universe Formation? When the Flame Master saw that ancient formation, his pupils hardened. Clearly, he knew about it. Bang! Mighty Yuan power and mental energy suddenly whistled out from within Lin Dong's body. Then, they transformed into two light pillars before they charged into the Ancient Universe Formation. The formation subsequently rotated before the two energies gradually merged together. Meanwhile, waves of frightening ripples slowly spread. The ripples radiating from the merged energies even caused the Flame Master's pupils to harden. You are skilled indeed. The Flame Master placed both of his hands gently together. Following which, a crimson color swiftly surged within his eyes. After which, his surroundings quickly turned scorching hot, while a bright sun slowly rose from his body. When Ying Xuanzi and many members of Dao sect saw that these two individuals, who typically did not interfere in each other's matter, were fighting, all of them were greatly startled. Wouldn't the two of them end up destroying the entire Dao sect if they fought here? The two people in the sky looked at each other with cold eyes. In the next moment, mighty energy surged as they prepared to fight. Stop! However, a cry suddenly sounded just as the both of them were about to fight. Immediately, cold aura gushed towards them from all directions before a beautiful figure appeared in front of Lin Dong. Then, she spread her arms before she blocked Lin Dong. After which, with some anger in her pretty eyes, she stared at the Flame Master and coldly said, "What are you trying to do?" The Flame Master looked at Ying Huan, who was protecting Lin Dong, before he was slightly startled. Then, he tightened his fist before relaxing. Finally, he turned his head away and said in a faint voice, "Like I said, I will not leave until you awaken." You? Lin Dong gritted his teeth. Ying Huan turned her head. She used her icy cool hand to grab Lin Dong's arm before she softly said, "Can you please calm down first?" Though her voice remained as cold as always, there was also a pleading note to it. Lin Dong looked at her before he finally sighed. After which, the light formation in the sky gradually disappeared before his Yuan power and mental energy returned to his body. A smile emerged on Ying Huan's face when she saw that Lin Dong had stopped. After all, she knew Lin Dong's character extremely well. The latter was usually calm and determined, and he would calmly handle any situation that he encountered. However, as of now, he had lost his usual cool due to anger. This was an extremely rare occurrence and Ying Huan clearly knew why. "Thank you," she softly said. Why are you saying this? Lin Dong shook his head. He looked at Ying Huan and said, have you suppressed the cold aura within your body? If I don't suppress it, the both of you would have torn the entire Dao sect apart. Ying Huan helplessly said. Do you really think that I do not know how to control myself? Lin Dong smiled and said. Why don't you let me handle this matter? Ying Huan glanced at Lin Dong before she asked for his opinion. Lin Dong hesitated for a moment before nodding. Ying Huan smiled upon seeing this. She turned her head before she used her pretty icy eyes to look at the Flame Master. After a brief moment, she said, Flame Master, I know what you are trying to do. Nevertheless, the current me is not the Ice Master that you are acquainted with. Moreover, I don't care about what happens in the future. As of now, I am still Ying Huan. If you want to stay here, please retract your aura. The Flame Master looked at Ying Huan's stern eyes. Promptly, he let out a long sigh and said, You should be aware of the exact situation. The Lightning Master has awoken. Subsequently, the Darkness Master, Chaos Master and the rest will show up one after another. At that time, Ying Huan lowered her pretty eyes and said, Well, it's not happening now, is it? The Flame Master was quiet. Moments later, he seemingly smiled as he continued to stare at Ying Huan's beautiful face. Then, he said, How unexpected. Someone like you who is so abnormally calm and rational would actually end up having such feelings for a man. Although he was smiling, there was a deeper meaning behind his words. That is because I am Ying Huan. Ying Huan softly replied. Perhaps. The Flame Master shook his head. Then, he turned around and left, waving his hand in the process. I will do as you say and try to retract my aura. Following which, after his voice sounded, his body disappeared as he hurried towards a distant mountain. Lin Dong stared in silence at the Flame Master, who was now disappearing into the horizon. After which, he slowly clenched his fist. Ultimately, this was all because he lacked sufficient strength. After all, if he had sufficient strength and was able to shoulder that burden, he could allow her to smile as happily and carefree as before. Moreover, at that time, who would dare to object? A farce had ended in this manner. All the disciples from Dao sect looked at one another, before they turned to glance at the person standing in the sky. Only then, did they finally scatter. Although they did not really understand what was going on, it was likely that the Flame Master must have done something overboard to cause the usually collected Marshal Senior Lin Dong to lose his temper. However, they had a simple thought in mind. Regardless of what happened, anyone in Dao sect will always support Lin Dong. The cold aura on your body has not disappeared. You should spend some time quietly training and avoid fighting with others. Standing in the sky, Lin Dong looked at Ying Huan, who was still emitting a cold aura from within her body, before he said. Ying Huan nodded. Promptly, she softly said, However, you must promise me never to lash out at the Flame Master again. Though that is only his avatar, his actual body will definitely come in the future. She was also worried about Lin Dong. After all, she was well aware of the strength of the Flame Master. In a genuine fight, Lin Dong would surely get the short end of the stick. Moreover, the Flame Master represented a group of people, the most terrifying group of individuals even during the ancient times. I was indeed a little reckless this time around. Lin Dong sighed. He was indeed a little reckless this time around. However, when he realized that the Flame Master had quietly awakened the dormant Ice Master's strength within Ying Huan's body, without giving them any prior warnings, he was involuntarily outraged. Moreover, the real reason why he was so upset was because the Flame Master had acted behind his back. After all, he trusted the Flame Master and this was the reason why he allowed the latter to follow them. However, the latter did something sneaky behind his back and his actions had genuinely crossed a line. He knew that the Flame Master and the other ancient masters had grand ambitions and they wanted to protect this world. Meanwhile, Lin Dong also respected them for that. In fact, no one else could match their contributions to this world. From a certain point of view, what they did to Ying Huan was not a mistake. In fact, in their opinion, only after the Ice Master fully awakens would it be possible to save this world. However, Lin Dong did not wish for Ying Huan to become a foreign and icy person because of this. Nonetheless, he also knew that it was the responsibility of the Ice Master. Furthermore, there was no way to distinguish between Ying Huan and the Ice Master. Hence, she had no choice in this matter, and there was no way she could avoid this duty as well. Lin Dong was not acting selfishly when he wanted Ying Huan to reject this duty. He only wanted the perfect solution. After all, if he had the ability to shoulder this duty, there wouldn't be a need for Ying Huan to transform. Moreover, this world would also be saved. Even though Lin Dong knew that this method might seem a little naive, he was willing to pay any price to do so. After all, he had experienced numerous life and death situations, and despite suffering numerous injuries along the way, he had slowly walked towards this goal. As such, he hoped that he could gain their acceptance when the time came. Before that, he wanted to try his best to protect her voice and her smile. Ultimately, he was still a mortal man with feelings. When Ying Huan saw the complicated emotions on Lin Dong's face, she descended into silence. Promptly, she used her pretty icy blue eyes to look at the bustling and lively Dao sect. Immediately, she became a little absent-minded. Then, her delicate finger pointed to a distant square before she smilingly said, "Do you still remember? In the whole competition 3 years ago, that was the place where we fought for the very first time. After that, you were ruthlessly spanked by me." Lin Dong smiled and said. A faint flush surfaced on Ying Huan's face. Then, she chided, "At that time, I should have asked every senior and junior from my Sky Hall to beat you up. The seniors and juniors from my Desolate Hall are not afraid of you." Lin Dong involuntarily laughed. Suddenly, he realized that his mood had improved. Those past memories brought warmth to his heart. "All right, you should go and recuperate first. You should not come out in a state like this." After his mood improved, Lin Dong waved his hand towards Ying Huan and said, "All right." Ying Huan was well aware of her own body's condition. After all, if she did not suppress this cold aura, it would be quite harmful towards the ordinary Dao sect disciples. Therefore, she promptly smiled towards Lin Dong before she waved her small hand and said, "Don't lose your temper again." As of now, her conduct bore some resemblance to the way that fiery young girl acted 3 years ago. Promptly, Lin Dong felt some warmth in his heart. After which, he nodded and sent Ying Huan off with his eyes. Immediately, the latter transformed into a ray of light before she rushed back to the back mountain. The smile on Lin Dong's face finally scattered bit by bit after Ying Huan was gone. Clenching his hands tightly together, the expression in his eyes changed rapidly. It was a long while later before he released a deep sigh. He was able to stop the Flame Master this time around. However, what about the next time? If things truly developed like what the Flame Master said, after his actual body arrived, the Chaos Master, Darkness Master, and the other ancient masters would soon follow behind. At that time, would he still be able to protect Ying Huan? At that time, which ancient master would believe him if he claimed that he could shoulder Ying Huan's burden? Though he was quite powerful now, there was still a huge gap between him and those peak experts from the ancient times like the Flame Master. "Yang, do you think that I can surpass the Ice Master?" Lin Dong felt a little lost as he asked. "Did you think that you would have made it this far 3 years ago?" Yang smiled faintly and said, "However, I lack the confidence that I can protect her after those ancient masters arrive, and I doubt that I will be able to convince them that I am qualified to shoulder her burden." Yang was quiet. The Ice Master was exceptional. In fact, even his owner, the Symbol Ancestor, was full of praises for her. As such, trying to be on par with her was going to be an extremely difficult task. It is not impossible to convince them to acknowledge you. Yang was quiet for a moment before he suddenly said, "Do you have a way?" Lin Dong hurriedly asked in a startled fashion. "I do. However, I do not know if it will work." Yang paused before continuing. "Moreover, it also depends on someone else." "Who?" "Ling Qingzhu." "Ling Qingzhu." Lindong was startled. Then, he asked in a lost tone, "What has it got to do with her?" "I do not know the specifics. However, I sensed a ripple from her body that only my owner possessed." Yang spoke in a solemn voice. "Symbol ancestor?" Lindong's eyes shrunk. His heart was filled with uncertainty. How was Ling Qingzhu related to the symbol ancestor? "I do not know why she would possess a fluctuation that only my owner possessed. However, you can go and ask her yourself," Yang said. Lindong frowned before he shook his head. Ultimately, he was doing all this because of Ying Huanhuan. Hence, it was unfair to Ling Qingzhu if he asked her for help. As such, there was no way he could bring himself to ask her. "Forget it, I will think of a way by myself." Lindong sighed. "It's up to you. However, this is the first time I have ever encountered a situation like this. It is truly a waste to give it up," Yang muttered to himself. Lindong shook his head and ignored him. Meanwhile, he felt a little irritated in his heart. After regaining a short moment of peace, various unexpected situations had popped up. If only things would remain as peaceful as before. With these troubling thoughts in mind, Lindong slowly descended from the sky. He was just about to leave when a voice was transmitted from a short distance away. Immediately, he lifted his head before he saw Ying Xiaoxiao swiftly walking towards him. "Marshal Senior Xiaoxiao." Lindong smiled towards Ying Xiaoxiao and said, "I am no longer worthy of this form of address from you." Ying Xiaoxiao rolled her eyes at Lindong. Given his current strength, he was more than qualified even if he wanted to become the sect master. "That's right. I came to tell you that your friends have left for the demon region while you were in a seclusion. However, they set up a spatial formation before they left. Therefore, you will be able to reach the demon region in a couple of days if you wanted to. Little Martin and the rest have returned to the demon region." Lindong was startled. However, he quickly nodded. The Eastern Xian region was currently in a peaceful state and they ought to return to the demon region. Moreover, they still had to take care of their Four Titans Palace. Furthermore, given Little Flame's character, it was obvious that the demon region was more suited for him. Moreover, Ying Xiaoxiao suddenly paused before continuing. "Previously, Miss Ling Qingzhu led the final batch of members from Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace and left Dao Sect. They should be heading back to Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace. Has she left?" Lindong was dumbstruck. Promptly, a complicated emotion appeared in his eyes, while an unknown emotion rose in his heart. The Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace's disciples have left one after another during this period of time. At their initial rate, they should have all been gone 1 month ago. However, for some unknown reason, their speed subsequently slowed down. Moreover, Miss Qingzhu remained in Dao Sect for a month and only left with some members recently. Ying Xiaoxiao glanced at Lindong with a strange expression before she said. Lindong smiled bitterly. He naturally knew what Ying Xiaoxiao was implying. During the past month, he had descended into that bizarre trance. Therefore, the reason why Ling Qingzhu stayed behind was likely because she was worried about him. Now that he had successfully left his seclusion, she had also left quietly. However, her character remained the same as before. Moreover, she was completely different from Ying Huanhuan. The latter did not hide her love or hate, and she was even willing to risk her life to force Ying Xuanzi to show himself in order to protect him back at the unique Devil City. Though it might appear willful, it was in fact her way of expressing her love. However, Ling Qingzhu did not reveal anything. She would keep any emotion she felt deep inside herself, and would never mention it to anyone else. Only those who were close to her could sense the fiery heat encompassed within her icy cold heart. "I wanted to ask, what do you plan to do about Huanhuan and Miss Qingzhu?" Ying Xiaoxiao stared at Lindong and asked. "I?" Lindong moved his lips but was unable to say anything. Meanwhile, there was a complicated expression on his face and he lacked his usual decisiveness. After all, there was no way he could easily explain such a matter. Ying Xiaoxiao sighed. However, she did not press on. Instead, she said, "You should go and send her off." She shouldn't be far. Lin Dong nodded. He was just about to turn around and leave when Ying Xiaoxiao suddenly recalled something. Wait, during these past 2 months, your parents also sent you a message. They want you to do something for them. Do something? Lin Dong was stunned. What would his parents ask him to do? Your parents asked you to head to the northern Xian region and bring Qingtan back once you have the time. Qingtan. Lin Dong's heart involuntarily shook upon hearing that name. Immediately, an exceptionally warm and gentle expression appeared on his face. He wondered how that stubborn little lass, who always gave him a headache, was doing now. When Lin Dong thought of that lively smiling young lady wearing a black dress, holding onto a black sickle 3 years ago, his heart felt warm. It has been 3 years since he last saw her, and he really missed that little lass. I understood. I will bring her back as soon as possible. Lin Dong nodded. Qingtan was the little princess in their family whom both his parents and himself doted on. Therefore, there was no telling how many tears their mother had shed ever since she left home. Since he had returned, he should find the time to head to the northern Xian region. Lin Dong did not linger on after his laughter sounded. He waved his hand towards Ying Xiaoxiao before his body moved. After which, he left Dao sect. Ying Xiaoxiao sighed helplessly as she stared at his departing figure. Dozens of disciples from 9 Heaven's Supreme Purity Palace were traveling quietly within the mountain forest outside of Dao sect. A lovely and outstanding lady wearing a white dress was at the front. Meanwhile, there was a veil covering her face. However, her figure, which was outlined by her clothes, was perfect and alluring. Su Ruo was walking behind her. Meanwhile, she occasionally turned around and used her large eyes to look at that increasingly blurry Dao sect. Finally, she involuntarily asked softly, "Senior sister, are we going to leave just like this?" A faint voice was emitted from under Ling Qingzhu's veil. It seems like there were hardly any emotions in her voice. At the very least, we should bid goodbye to big brother Lin Dong before leaving. Su Ruo suggested. Ling Qingzhu glanced at her. She seemingly smiled before she spoke in a gentle voice, "Why do we have to care about this?" But senior sister, the reason why you stayed behind in Dao sect during this period of time, was because you want to see if he has successfully completed his training. Su Ruo bit her lips and said. Ling Qingzhu's footsteps paused. Following which, the sword scabbard in her hand gently knocked Su Ruo's small head before she said, "If you continue to spew such nonsense, I will confine you when we return." Su Ruo's small head shrunk and she did not dare to speak anymore. She is right. Since I brought all of you back to Dao sect, at the very least, you should come and say goodbye before you leave, am I right? A laughter was suddenly transmitted from the front. Ling Qingzhu's jade-like hand, which was currently holding onto her longsword, immediately stilled. After which, she slowly lifted her head before she saw a skinny figure in front of her, who was now leaning on a large tree at the end of the forest. Meanwhile, that man was looking at her with a smile. A faint light penetrated the forest and shone on his body. That warm sunlight evoked the sensation that one felt when one saw a clear sky after a snowstorm. Big brother Lin Dong. Su Ru's surprised cry broke the quietness in the mountain forest, while joy filled her young and pretty face. Senior brother Lin Dong. The 9 Heaven Supreme Purity Palace disciples also hurriedly cupped their hands together and greeted him. Lin Dong was the benefactor of their 9 Heaven Supreme Purity Palace. Moreover, the reason that they could have their revenge was also entirely because of Lin Dong. Lin Dong smiled at them. After which, his eyes turned towards the aloof lady in a white dress. The latter shifted her gaze away when she saw him look at her. The hand that held the sword scabbard gripped with a little more strength as faint green veins appeared on her fair skin. Su Ru looked at the both of them and laughed. Big brother Lin Dong, do you have something to say to senior sister? We'll go ahead first and wait. Su Ru quietly waved her hand after speaking and led the 9 Heaven Supreme Purity Palace disciples to walk past Ling Qingzhu. A trace of panic was finally revealed in Ling Qingzhu's normally clear eyes after seeing that Su Ru and the others were about to leave. She hurriedly reached out in an attempt to grab Su Ru. However, the latter playfully dodged her. After which, she waved her hand at Ling Qingshu. Senior sister, there is no need to hurry. We still have time, so you can slowly chat. The young lady was already laughing in a lovely voice after her voice faded. She led the disciples from the Nine Heavens Supreme Purity Palace out of the mountain forest. After which, her laughter gradually became distant. The mood within the forest once again turned to silence after Su Ru and the rest left. Ling Qingzhu remained where she stood. Her graceful and enchanting figure possessed some extremely tempting curves. Her dress was like snow and her fine black hair was loosely tied together. She had an extraordinary demeanor. Although she had initially panicked a little, her mental fortitude was relatively strong, and she very quickly regained her calm. Her expression was as still as the water in an old well. However, a slightly faster than usual breathing partially exposed the current state of her heart. It's not very nice of you to simply leave without saying goodbye, is it? Lin Dong slowly walked forward amidst this silence as he looked at the woman before him and said, "We have already imposed on you for many days. Dao sect has many internal affairs to deal with. By leaving quietly, we will be able to reduce some of your trouble." Ling Qingzhu replied. "Is this really the case?" Lin Dong stood in front of Ling Qingzhu. His gaze was fixed on her face, a face which appeared extremely beautiful despite being covered by a veil. Suddenly, he sighed and said, "It has already been 8 years since we met, right?" Both of them had met in the small Great Yang Empire. At that time, she was a pride of the heavens who stood high above, while he was merely a weak young man from a small family, who was struggling through numerous challenging experiences. At that time, he could only look up to Ling Qingzhu when he saw her aloof and beautiful face. It was the first time he had met such a beauty, and his heart would naturally beat more rapidly like an ordinary person. However, he was aware of the gap between the both of them. He had to admit that even he felt a little ashamed in his heart when he met Ling Qingzhu back then. However, things changed with the passage of time. 8 years later, the former young man was now standing at the peak of this continent. Perhaps only he understood in his heart just how much hardship he had experienced over this period of time. Nevertheless, he had never regretted anything. Ripples involuntarily rose within Ling Qingzhu's clear eyes when she heard Lin Dong's words. She slowly lifted her head and her pretty eyes looked at his young face. 8 years ago, there had still been some immaturity on his face. However, Lin Dong's eyes remained passionate and stubborn even when her sword had been placed at his throat. "After 8 years, our status seemed to have changed. Congratulations, you have surpassed me." Ling Qingzhu slightly pursed her red lips. Soon after, she softly mocked herself. "Teacher told me that my proud character is akin to a lotus on the tall mountains. However, this is practically an aphrodisiac to men. This is because the thing that a man loves to do the most is to subdue a tall mountain that they cannot reach. As for you, you have been thinking of how to subdue me since the very beginning, right? However, you are indeed very strong. Given your current strength, it will be very easy to subdue me." Ling Qingzhu stared at Lin Dong. Her eyes were slightly red and her face contained a look of self-mockery. How could Lin Dong understand the emotions in her heart? She was aware of the first impression she had given Lin Dong. At that time, the searing passion and stubbornness in the latter's eyes made her understand that she had become his target, like a wolf cub looking up at a sunflower on a tall cliff. Hence, he had to overcome all the obstacles in his way and did his best to progress. Many years had passed since then. When they met again, the young man was already very different. Although he had yet to reach a level that could shock her, she began to pay attention to this figure due to the relationship between them. After which, they met in the unique devil region. When they were at the Supreme Purity Celestial Pond, ripples finally emerged in her usually calm heart. The blood-soaked figure's valiant struggle during the earth-shaking fight at Unique Devil City had caused her heart to shiver a little. However, she managed to suppress it with the extraordinary strength of her heart. She ultimately ended up as an onlooker whose heart was beating the most rapidly, and did not lend him a helping hand. It was not because she did not wish to, but because she believed that he would not simply fail in such a manner. She believed that he would be truly powerful the next time he returned to the eastern Xian region. Reality had turned out exactly as she had envisioned. However, when he truly stood in front of her in an incomparably dazzling manner, she began to feel that he was somewhat foreign. The wolf cub from back then had finally arrived in front of the sunflower atop the tall cliff. However, this was merely a kind of subjugation. Perhaps, he would never have thought that the girl from back then, who was as high up and untouchable as a fairy in his eyes back then, would unknowingly use such an undetectable method to pay attention to his once lowly self. She had never uttered his name even when her teacher questioned her incessantly. Even though she was aware that he did not have any status, she mysteriously headed to the small Great Yang Empire after he left and paid her respects to his parents in a gentle manner that she had never shown before. Even though she was aware that he did not lack her attention, she still quietly remained in Dao sect until he got through his crisis, before she finally left in a silent manner. She was aware of Ying Huan. Back then in Unique Devil City, she had witnessed what this girl had done for him. The latter dared to love and hate. This character caused Ling Qingzhu to be a little envious. However, the two of them were ultimately different. Ling Qingzhu was a lotus flower that kept to herself, hiding everything deep within her aloof heart that no one could touch. Perhaps it was because of this that Lin Dong ultimately had the mentality of trying to subdue her as opposed to the pure feelings that she wished for. Lin Dong was startled as he looked at the red-eyed Lin Qingzhu before him. At this moment, Ling Qingzhu was displaying a weakness that he had never witnessed before. The outer shell-like aloofness and indifference seemed to have finally completely melted away, and he could now sense the wave surging within the latter's heart. Lin Dong was quiet. A moment later, he finally slowly extended his hand in an attempt to wipe off the tears on her face. However, she lightly dodged him and wiped them off herself. Her expression once again became indifferent. It was as if the earlier scene had been an illusion. It is not that I wish to subdue. My thought process was rather simple in the past. It was to let you look at me in a different light. I only wished to prove that your opinion of me in the past was wrong. Lin Dong was quiet for a moment, before he softly sighed. His tone was gentle. Ling Qingzhu turned her head slightly, but did not look at him. I was also aware of the gap between us back then. Even though such a thing had happened, I also understood that I was a mere toad lusting after the meat of a swan. However, a lowly toad like myself did have a little ambition. I hoped that when I could finally stand in front of you again, I would be able to face you directly instead of looking up at you like back then. At that time, I only wished to stand before you as an equal. Lin Dong slowly said. Ling Qingzhu's delicate figure shook slightly upon hearing Lin Dong's words. After which, she slowly turned her head and looked at Lin Dong. At this moment, a smile had already emerged on the latter's face. However, this smile was filled with fatigue. He had similarly strived for many years for that simple desire. Ling Qingzhu gently clenched her hands. I say all this only because I hope to let you know that I am not like what you have imagined, wanting to completely subdue you and enjoy the perverted joy from such a subjugation. I merely wish to be your equal. Do you understand? Otherwise, I would not have immediately hurried to Nine Heaven's Supreme Purity Palace the moment I heard that there was trouble. Lin Dong said in a hoarse voice. A long time ago, he really did wish to surpass her. However, did he really not feel any other emotions besides that? This was something that he was well aware of in his heart. Ling Qingzhu gently bit her red lips. A long while later, she lightly nodded. A faint acknowledgement was heard from under the veil. Next, the both of them became silent. However, this silence no longer had the stifling feeling that was present at the start. Ling Qingzhu stood there in an elegant manner as she lowered her head and looked at the long sword she was holding in her hand. Although her demeanor was as aloof as before, there was an additional trace of liveliness compared to before. Giggles suddenly sounded from afar, causing Ling Qingzhu to be startled. She lifted her head to look at Lin Dong and said, I am going to return to Nine Heaven's Supreme Purity Palace. Oh? Lin Dong was dazed. Has Nine Heaven's Supreme Purity Palace been rebuilt? Everything should be okay, right? Yes. Although teacher died, the many elders in the palace had fortunately only sustained severe injuries, and are now mostly recovered. However, I am now the new palace master. Ling Qingzhu nodded and said. Lin Dong sighed softly in his heart. Nine Heaven's Supreme Purity Palace had undergone a drastic change during this period of time. The palace was destroyed and the palace master had died. All responsibility had fallen onto Ling Qingzhu. However, she had never shown any weakness or complaint, but instead quietly shouldered these burdens. At times, this strength really made one's heart ache. Take this jade. Shatter it if you encounter any problems and I will immediately hurry over. Lin Dong handed over a piece of black jade and said. Ling Qingzhu hesitated for a moment. Finally, she received it and gently held it in her hand. A faint warmth emanated from it. In that case, I will take my leave. Ling Qingzhu glanced at Lin Dong and said. I? Lin Dong smiled and nodded. However, Ling Qingzhu had only taken 2 steps when a voice suddenly sounded from behind. Wait! He still wishes to ask you why you possess the fluctuation of the symbol ancestor. This sudden voice caused Ling Qingzhu to be stunned. After which, she turned around, only to see a light figure drifting out from Lin Dong's body. Next, Lin Dong's face turned completely black. This episode ends here.